Okay, so just wrapping up where we were here. We got caught off at the gradient, so I want to talk to you guys about how I made this triangle and a little bit about transparencies, okay? So when you're in your triangle layer, you've selected it, and you have your shape panel out, you're going to stay in the star tool. So the star tool can draw stars, right? It can draw what I forget the words, like, you know, 6-sided, 7-sided, 8-sided stars, and it can also draw triangles. So what we do instead of clicking and dragging is we just click, and we tell it that we want the points to be 3 to make a triangle. So if I wanted to be a bigger star, have more points, it would include it. So I'm going to tell it I just need 3 because I want a triangle. It hits OK. It already populates itself with whatever was the fill and stroke. Okay, so here's my triangle. None fill so I can see. And my selection tool so I can hold down. And just about. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Resize it. Use my arrow keys to place it. And then go ahead and choose a fill and choose a stroke. Now, we got cut off a little bit with the gradient, so I'm going to go over a little bit more about how I got all these colors on my star in the triangle. So when I do make it a gradient, and there is a gradient panel that corresponds, that lives right here, and you roll over it, looks just like the gradient tool. That's one thing you can do. Another thing is you can grab your gradient tool and play with the direction. Okay, now I'm going to grab my gradient panel so I have more control. You'll see that there are a number of toggles down here, each with their own color. That's why I have multiple colors here. Now I can get rid of some of these. I don't like my purple, for example. I just click on this toggle and I drag down. It's gone. And I can relocate these, and then up here I can say how much of a certain color. So I'm going to get rid of this one and start out with this. Now, how did I get a different color from black and white? When you double click on these little toggles, you'll open up your stroke panel. You can also get your color finder. And if this was operating correctly, there we go, you would have multiple colors to choose from. Okay, now I can do a couple things. I can add a couple more colors like you saw. If you're in your gradient tool and you have your bar down below, you would do the same thing as I'm about to do in my gradient panel. So I'm just going to hover below here and click. So again, I hover below and I click. And then I have a third color. So I can open that up and assign another color. Okay, I can also in my gradient panel choose what type of gradient I want, and I can do radiant. Looks like this is not populating. I can show how much opacity I want. So in my green little toggle, I told it to be 30%, 40%, almost full. I can tell the location, tell it how wide. All right, so you don't have to play around with these too much, but if you wanted to know what they do, I can also flip it. So reverse my gradient. Okay, so the gradient panel gives you lots of options, a lot more options than just your gradient tool with the bar. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. I'm going to put this back to linear. Let's keep it like a basic regular gradient here. Make it a little bit more pink. And I'm going to show you the transparencies before we wrap up. So transparency has its own panel. I'm going to grab my panels one more time, reset them. So here's my layers. Here's my gradient, and the transparency lives right below it. So as long as I'm in the selection tool and I've selected on this, it knows what we're dealing with, what object. So I can always lower the opacity of an object And there's always multiple places to do this. You can also do that up here. Tell it what the opacity is. Okay, so you can see I've done that with these guys. When I click on this, it was 90%. When I click on this, it was 80%. So when I click on this, bring it back to 100. So this is now at 80. And here's what you could do with this. So I want a little bit of a gradient, but I want also a little bit of a color. So I'm going to make a copy of this. All I have to do is make sure when I'm in my selection tool, I hold down all option, and I click and drag. You can make as many copies as you need. Just going to delete that. We just need 2 for this. So on the second copy I made, I'm going to go and put just a regular fill. And I'm going to lower the opacity of that a bit more here or here, same thing. And then you can see when I put them over each other, now it has a little bit of a zebra stripe with the purple and the pink gradient. And I can click on these. Now these are 2 objects. So when I get in my layer panel, you'll see when I open my triangle layer, there's 2 objects in there. There is the one I made with a zebra, the copy that I made it from. And I can select both of these by just clicking and dragging over. So they're both selected, right? I can make these link together as a group by hitting Command G. And you'll see that they just made it a group. So when I click off, it's just one object now. Okay? So that's something you can play with. You don't have to do the transparencies. I would like you to do everything with a different fill, a different stroke again. Play with the patterns once at least. Do one basic gradient, okay? And if you're feeling like you get this, then maybe play a bit more with your gradient panel. Maybe play a bit more with your transparency panel, which do correspond, or you can pull them out separately right here, okay? When you're ready to be done, you're going to get your layers panel up, put it to the side. You're going to hit Shift Command 4, and you're going to click, hold down, and drag. And you're going to turn in your screenshot to our assignment, showing me what you practice and what you understand.